I think one of the things I always say, whether it's Cartel Land or City of Ghosts or this film I just made about COVID, is if we can at least attempt to allow audience members to feel what we felt in that room, in that stadium, in that shootout, in that meth lab, and wherever you are, if we can put you on the ground there and make you feel those emotions, then we've, somewhat succeeded.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, director Matthew Heineman takes us behind the scenes of his new documentary, The Boy from Medellín. The film provides an immersive look at a dramatic week in the life of international superstar J Balvin. As he prepares for his sold-out stadium concert in his hometown of Medellín, Colombia, public pressure and political unrest grow around him, forcing him to reflect on how he will use his voice. The Boy from Medellín was screened as part of the DGA's documentary series, which aims to spotlight groundbreaking nonfiction films by presenting screenings of documentaries, as well as conversations with their directors. In addition to The Boy from Medellín, Mr. Heineman's filmography includes the documentary feature Escape Fire, The Fight to Rescue American Healthcare, and episodes of the television documentary miniseries Tiger and The Trade. He is a two-time winner of the DGA's Documentary Award for 2017's City of Ghosts and 2015's Cartel Land, and was nominated for the DGA's First Time Feature Film Award for his 2018 debut narrative feature, A Private War. Following the documentary series screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Mr. Heineman spoke with director Ondi Timoner about filming The Boy from Medellín. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
I think it's one of the, I guess it's your first time ever seeing it projected because of COVID. Is that right?
It is my first time, yes.
How was it?
It was amazing, yeah.
It's so
not the
beautiful.
film, but the sound was amazing.
I was just asking you what you shot it on because it's gorgeous. It's the color. I mean, he's so colorful and his motif is so colorful, but the cameras you were using were just picked up I've never seen anything so just beautiful in terms of crowd shots there at the end.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you said, how many people did you have shooting that last concert?
The concert, we had, I think, 12 cameras.
Okay. And where were you?
I was
running around?
I was in a control room, sort of with like a headset.
Directing it live.
Yeah.
Wow. And you told me also during dinner that you had never shot concert before this film.
I've never shot more than 2 cameras in my life. So
that's amazing.
And we had about a week to prep for it. So because
I've shot a lot of concerts, and that shot in Mexico in that first concert, when you get behind him and there's that glowing white light and then there's all the phones, it's like the dream shot. I mean, I've never actually seen a concert shot that's that perfect, it's a beautiful shot. Yeah. And it really speaks to what he's talking about, which is probably a big part of why you did this. Tell me about how you ended up making this film.
Yeah, so Jose and his team reached out to me. I was always interested in making a film about music and, maybe making, a concert doc. And I met him after a show that he played at Madison Square Garden. And we connected. He talked a lot about his own battles with mental health and anxiety and depression, something that I've dealt with myself. And yeah, we just connected. And I felt like, to me, whenever I look at a film, I always want to try to say something hopefully bigger or deeper than just what's on the surface. And I knew just in that sort of 30-minute conversation that he would make himself vulnerable. I had no idea that when we'd land in Medellín, that the protests would happen, that the film would become a verite film about really an artist, struggling to find his voice. But that's what the film became.
I was actually going to ask you about that because I, as an artist, struggle with that as a filmmaker. Becoming an activist, we kind of threaten our access, like our access becomes at risk because we're taking a side. And I wonder if that was part of why he was reluctant. He said at first it's like the role of the artist to really just make people feel better or bring people together. And if you're saying one side or the other, then that was the risk, maybe. almost like Taylor Swift went through. But yeah, tell me about that arc. What happened with him there?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of things, hopefully a lot of it's shown in the movie, but I think he felt like he really put himself out there in talking about his own battles with mental health as a man from Colombia. That's not something that people generally talk about. And I felt like he sort of felt like he'd already put himself out there a lot. And, I think this week was really reckoning about politically what was his role, as one of the most famous people in Colombia. Obviously, everyone was looking to him to say something. And as you said, like, he felt like he was just an entertainer. And so it was, you can't plan this stuff as a documentary filmmaker, but to have this sort of prism of this 1 week to sort of have a man reckoning with himself, seeking the counsel of his friends and his colleagues, to try to understand that role, was fascinating.
Was the turning point for him the boy who was killed, and sort of when did it bubble up for you? Like, oh my God, this is happening. I've got to go and get this, because it's reminded me of your work with Cartel Land. I imagine you're probably the person filming a lot of that. It didn't look like archival that you acquired.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, we went down there kind of thinking we were going to make a very traditional sort of music doc, crescendoing with this concert, interviewed his family. We did interview, tons and tons of interviews, through that week with everyone around him. But I instantly felt like I could make a verite film, that I could make a sort of fly on the wall. And so while we had that and that stuff in the can, no one's ever seen it, because just the DNA of the film completely changed. And it was so exciting to be able to sort of shoot. We were shooting like 18 hours a day, and we from the moment he woke up to when he went to bed. And this is a guy who obviously has had cameras around him his whole life, or his whole sort of professional life. And I don't think he'd ever had cameras around him in this way. And, for me as a filmmaker, and this too, obviously, is that trust and that rapport is generally built over weeks or months. And I had to build that like instantly. And, I told myself I had this 1 week window to make this film, and you have to find the story within this week. So it was just a really fun, artistic challenge. And,
When I first did commercials, that's why I liked doing them. It was because it was like, oh my gosh, after making documentaries that span years, to do something that's that short, it's really like sport fishing or something. It's like, oh my God, you got to get in there and get it and get out, And I think in a way, it's almost like shooting on film, how they say everybody brings their A game because it matters because you're rolling celluloid and you don't have that much of it. You didn't have that much time, And so, I think watching it again tonight, it really impresses me, because a lot of these, I don't like a lot of music. I'm very critical of music films, having made Dig. And I always feel like there needs to be a narrative that transcends the fan base. And, I feel like with this, you managed to do that. And it's a matter of your skills and also what happened in that week. But it does become really a study of like, what is our position as artists? And he goes from, okay, I've exposed myself emotionally. Now I have to expose myself politically. And you must have felt totally torn, because you're used to doing films about verite films and out in the streets. And when did you do that shot with him where he's walking through the crowd out in the streets, and you're showing him as a man of the people, which is great and important. But was that before the protests broke out? Like,
that was, as you saw, it was quite exactly early in that week. Yeah.
Early in that week. Yeah. It was like a day before, or 2 days before probably that happened, right? Like he's in the streets, and the next thing the streets explode. Yeah. And then everything's getting canceled, and possibly the show, I would imagine.
That was always sort of the tension point of, would the show actually happen?
Right. And then you mentioned that everything got changed up on you. Tell me about that. Usually an artist when they're playing a show this big, has access to the arena quite a bit in advance. So they said at one point in the film, yeah, they're going to go down there and practice every day. So did that happen, and how did things change?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'd never shot a multicam shoot before, and we sort of literally plotted it like that week as I'm shooting 18 hours a day of Verite. And then they completely changed the stage setup, I think either the day of or the day before the concert. So, yeah, I mean, but that's what we do, is we react to things and we do the best we can. And hopefully, yeah, we did an okay job of covering it. The thing we didn't know was Jay-Z called Jose to congratulate him on the concert. And then Scooter Braun, his manager, sort of challenged him. Kanye and Jay-Z had toured together and played a song, I think 11 times in a row or 10 times in a row. And so they challenged Jose to play this song Blanco that you see right before he makes a speech 12 times. So we ended up literally playing that song for 45 minutes from like 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. and he still had not spoken. And so I was just like, is there going to be an end to this movie? Is there going to be an end to this concert? We weren't sure if he was actually going to say anything.
But so, he had told you he was going to say something.
I didn't know. No, I had no idea. Yeah.
Oh, so you didn't know, but the challenge was on the table. Like, are you actually going to stand up for the youth of this country?
Yeah. That was the arc that we thought might happen, but we didn't know.
I love when you're like 11, he's like 11:10, 1, 2, 3, 4 hours. And then they go back out on stage. So it was like a 5-hour show or something.
I think it's 4.5 hours. Yeah. Something like that.
And then you knew to get in the car. Like, does he typically drive himself out of a venue?
I had no idea so that was the first time that I actually had walked out of the control room and I literally grabbed my camera and just jumped in the car. I didn't know where we were going, what was happening. So that whole scene was, just me in the back of the car with him. And,
but then you have this drone shot. That's pretty epic.
Yeah. I mean, we had another drone, up in the air, just filming them.
And then I love his girlfriend's reaction to the girl who's like, have my son. Was the same girl that's hanging onto his neck in the car? She removes the hand. Yeah, that's amazing. And there's got to be a hard position to be in, right? Like, it's overwhelming. I did promise all of you questions. I haven't forgotten my promise. I only have a few more. I actually wrote them down, which shows just that I've a little rusty from the pandemic. I never write things down and bring them out here. But Ramiro, that's the name of the spiritual advisor. We were trying to remember the guru. So he tells him some really important advice. And just tell me about how that meeting came about. Does he always meet with him? Was it because he was in this crisis at that time? And what that scene means to you in the course of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a spiritual guy, and as you see in the film, I mean, meditation plays a huge role in calming his nerves and has been sort of his medicine as he's dealt with anxiety and depression. And I think, Ramiro has been a big part of that for him. And so I think as he was struggling with these sort of big ideas of who he is and what is his role, he sought the counsel of all the people around him. But that's why I love making Verite docs. You just never know what's going to happen.
But what I find in my experience making them is that the puzzle pieces arrive. Like, if you hang in there, all the pieces start just appearing in this magical way, whether it's a week or it's a year, it's comes to be. And then of course you edit, and that's where the serendipity, you can connect all those dots magically. What was the biggest surprise for you in the edit?
I think this film, more than any film by far, the arc was quite clear as we were shooting. I think most of the nuance actually came during that week in the subtext, and obviously there's a lot that, there's juxtapositional energy that we created in the edit room. But I think, again, more so than any other film I've ever made, it really was clear sort of what was happening at the time. And it was, fun to be able to sort of I always believe that context is a slippery slope. I didn't want to make the cradle to grave Jose film. I wanted to make a really present day, present tense movie. And, I wanted to give you as little information as you needed to know about where he came from to understand where he is now. But I didn't want to sort of go into all those tropes that a lot of music films have.
Actually, I wanted to mention that, like, there's no the songwriting or his hair being spray painted or, all the things that you would normally see. There's a little bit of that backstage in between performances, changing clothing and peeing in a bottle and cool little moments like that. But otherwise, it is really interesting to see a film about a musician where you're not really seeing any of that. You're not seeing how the songs came together. You're not seeing the rehearsals, I think that's really pretty great, that choice. But you said you shot a lot of traditional things to make sure to cover your bases and then just ended up being able to leave them out, right?
Yeah, I had one of my producers shoot. I actually never did any of the interviews just because I was like, I felt so strongly that we had this verite film. And so that's what all my energy was put into that. I wanted that as a sort of safety mechanism, just in case I was wrong. But I think, I love editing. I love shooting. I feel so lucky to do what I do and what we do. And I think one of the things I always say, whether it's Cartel Land or City of Ghosts or this film I just made about COVID, is if we can at least attempt to allow audience members to feel what we felt in that room, in that stadium, in that shootout, in that meth lab, and wherever you are, if we can put you on the ground there and make you feel those emotions, then we've, somewhat succeeded.
That's absolutely it. It's about creating a visceral response in the audience. And that can be hard when you're not, actually framing something up as a scripted film, but you managed to do that really well. And I was actually wondering if you started the film in Mexico just to get a show as he arrives in Medellín, or whether it was a relationship to Cartel Land and that you actually, have shot extensively in Mexico and you speak Spanish, and maybe that's how you even came on board this film, but there's no relationship there.
No, in fact, that was actually the first time I had been back to Mexico since Cartel Land. So it was, no, I think the purpose of Mexico was sort of a foil to be part of the arrival of this big homecoming concert. So I really wanted to be with him on that journey. I didn't even plan on, as I think I told you before, I didn't plan on shooting that first concert in Mexico.
Yeah.
I just, when he walked out and all those cell phones were shining, I just grabbed the camera and started shooting because it looked so beautiful. And yeah.
Wow.
So the coverage of the Mexico show is not.
So you were there to get the plane ride in more so than.
And just sort of see how he moves around the stage and see how he relates his body language to the audience. I really was more there to sort of study him.
I'm glad you shot it.
Yeah, and ended up shooting a few different songs, but
and his speech about depression, which is a perfect opening for the film, really sets the tone. I have this chance to ask you, which I don't think even when you were on my show for Cartel Land, I asked you, like, what was the original draw to being a doc filmmaker? Like, how did you ever even start?
I got rejected from Teacher America.
I got rejected from film school. Yeah. But that's because I had been making documentaries in college and they didn't know what these were back then. But I'm dating myself now. But so, yeah, you got rejected from Teacher America. And
Teach for America.
Teach for America.
I thought I wanted to be a teacher, and apparently I wasn't supposed to be. And I with three of my best friends, we raised some money and rented an RV to drive around the U.S. for 3 months, interviewing kids from all walks of life, from Mark Zuckerberg to drug dealers and cancer researchers, and taught myself as I went. And through that process of filming, just fell in love with filmmaking and thought it was such a privilege to be able to, through this little piece of plastic or in glass, to relate to human beings. And that was sort of it.
And how did you get Mark Zuckerberg on a whim? Like that's very interesting.
It was 2005. I filmed him literally moving into his first office. I mean, we emailed him. I mean, he was nobody then. But.
Wow. That's amazing. I also fell in love with documentary filmmaking driving across America. So we should talk about this sometime. That was like my first foray. I was like, wow, this is amazing. If I ask somebody a question, I'm holding a camera, they actually answer it. And then it's more interesting living life this way. And so it just kind of went from there. But then I think really when I got to know your work was Cartel Land. Did you make several films before that we should be digging out and looking at? No?
Not necessarily. Or you can if you want. I mean, I was from that film, which became this little film called Our Time.
Oh, that's the name of your production company.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then I was really fortunate to get a job at HBO where I worked on this film series called The Alzheimer's Project. Then I made a film on healthcare called Escape Fire, and then I made Cartel Land. So
let me not fail to ask you about your new film that you just mentioned about COVID.
Yeah.
You just finished it yesterday, is that right? And then flew in here to talk to us? And now you're leaving?
Finished it last week. Yeah.
Last week. Okay. So can you talk about it at all?
Yeah. I mean, I spent about 4 months from sort of March to June in New York, filming in a hospital in Queens, following a few doctors and nurses and patients in an ICU. And it really sort of became a portrait of New York. It's called The First Wave. So,
wow, that's going to be really. I'm sure you saw just the full range of human emotion in that and tragedy, and then everyone here is wondering if you caught COVID, and the answer is, I know the answer.
I did not get COVID. No,
it's amazing. Nobody on your crew caught COVID.
No.
Yeah, that's amazing. Did you learn anything new about human beings in that, like resilience or something about what was your big takeaway, do you think, from making that and going through that trauma?
I don't want to usurp the Voice of Medellín Q&A to talk about COVID, unless you want.
Okay. No, just curious about that. I mean, then I will ask one last question and open it to the audience.
No, I learned. I mean, this past year has changed all of us in many different ways. And I think, I mean, the film sort of runs the gamut of the human experience of life and death and birth and sort of everything in between. And again, like most films that I made, I felt extremely privileged to be able to be there during this historical time. I'd always made these films about different places in the world, and to be able to make a film about my own city that I've lived in for a long time. And the original intent of the film really was to be an homage to the amazing, heroic work that frontline healthcare workers were doing every single day. And so that's why, I originally started making that film.
Amazing. And then I just wanted to ask you what you related to in J Balvin. We talked about Ramiro for a second, and what I wanted to touch on there was Jose versus J Balvin, and putting Jose first. And you kind of come back to that beautiful move where you have that deep breathing at the end. But tell me what made you decide to make a film about a person who you weren't necessarily a fan of? And
I wasn't not a fan. I wasn't super aware of his music before I made it. And
it wasn't like making a film about David Bowie or something, you know what I mean? Or some huge influence for you. I
mean, he's obviously a massive star and one of the most streamed artists in the world. I just personally wasn't super aware of his music before, but now I am, obviously.
Yeah, I love it too now, thanks to you.
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
The question is, why did you make this film? Like, what was the emotional connection? Or like, you didn't know there was going to be a street war. You didn't know you're going to have a verite film per se, but why take this on?
Yeah, I think.
What did you see in him that you thought we should see in him?
I mean, I think I saw someone who was really vulnerable, and I think on the surface he had everything. I mean, that's the whole tension between Jose and J Balvin, right? Is that the J Balvin that everyone knows, his 46.5 million Instagram followers, is this sort of playboy, fancy cars, jewelry, as he says. But he's a really sensitive soul. And that also is a bit of a trope in music and celebrity, and athletes and everything. There's sort of these two dualities of a person, but it was particularly stark in him. And I think that tension between the public facing J Balvin and the interior Jose, I think is sort of at the fulcrum of a lot of his anxiety and a lot of his tension, because at his core, he is a really normal guy. And, that scene in Comuna Trece when he's going to see all the fans and it's the photo shoot, and it's really him. I mean, he talks to the little kid running up to him in the same way that he talks to Jay-Z, or that he talks to me, or he talks to you. I mean, he really treats everyone the same. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. So, it was a really, I feel extremely lucky that he made himself so open. I think it's very rare for people that famous to do that. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. And I had an amazing crew in Colombia that helped make the film possible. And it was a really special experience.
Yeah, I think the whole metaphor also of him coming home and then coming home to himself, and having to like really dig deep, it all really came thematically. It was a beautiful kind of holistic experience, So I love the shot too. I'll never forget that picture you put in of him with paint splatter on his face in Miami, just struggling by day and night to make it, and then when he does, it's not like, he doesn't lose that part of himself, I love how he says he can never turn down anybody taking a picture with him. And then you see that at the very end of the film, like he's like literally putting his window up and down to like let people in. So it's great. I want to open it up and make sure that other people have a chance to ask Matt questions. Right there in the center, in the back.
Yeah, and I meant to say also, thank you all. I know this is a strange experience to be back in a theater, and it was really, really special to first of all see it on a big screen in this amazing room, but also just to be with people. So I know it's hard to reassimilate into the world. So thank you all for coming here. It was also, it was a different experience shooting Verite with Jose. I knew how comfortable he was with cameras. So in most of my Verite films, it's often just me alone, shooting. And that's where I feel most comfortable as a director or whatever I am. This, because I knew he was so comfortable, I sensed it and I tested it and then it played out. And so we ended up having, for a lot of the Verite through the week, there's 2 different DPs, often with him. And I was, right there with the monitor and sort of, But it was a way different experience for me. I just seen this movie, Waves. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but I thought it was a really, really beautiful film. And so I reached out to the DP. It's a narrative film. And he'd never shot a doc before. And I had another DP who's, a sort of veteran doc shooter. And I decided right before literally as we landed in Mexico, that I wanted the narrative DP to shoot the Verite and the doc DP to oversee the concert. And I think that was probably one of the better decisions I made. And it was really fun to see Drew, who shot Waves, work in a Verite environment because he was so instinctual. And it was like a really fun thing to see. I had made a narrative film called A Private War, and was really lucky to work with Robert Richardson on that. And, we shot a lot of that similarly in a sort of a Verite way. And I'd always dreamed of having Bob shoot a doc with me. So I guess this was sort of the closest I got to that. For this film, for probably 60% of it, I wasn't shooting the actual day-to-day Verite. I was there, but I wasn't holding the camera. And then for some of the more intimate scenes, that was just me alone with the camera. Yeah, his team was behind the film. It was a requirement for me in making this to have Final Cut. I knew there was a lot of players involved, and it was mandatory for me to have Final Cut on this. So luckily there was no issues, and he's been really gracious with the film and with his time and in marketing and everything. So. And part of the reason I didn't shoot, going back to the previous question, is that I was able to establish rapport with Jose quite quickly. But as the sort of cast of characters was coming in and out, I was constantly dancing and explaining and trying to make people feel comfortable and get used to the sort of this fly on the wall approach. So it was just a constant dance throughout that week.
Yes, back there. Yep.
We didn't use anamorphic lenses. We used a camera called the Sony Venice, and actually used like predominantly extremely cheap, just Canon like $500 lenses. I'm sort of really dogmatic with the lenses that I use. I use this Canon 17-55 and a Canon 24-105, and that's what I use in Cartelian. That's what I use in City of Ghosts, and that's what I sort of required us to use on this. They're not great lenses, but to me, they're the best way to shoot verite. So thank you.
Yeah, I thought that it's not surprising that it's Sony actually. For the green is just like, the color is incredible. And I also thought it was really interesting that he's just so colorful. His world is just color. His house, his clothing, everything. And he's struggling with so much darkness underneath it all,
Yeah, and I think I always sort of going into it, and especially there, really wanted to make Medellín a character. Besides his efforts to sort of destigmatize mental health, he'd done a lot of work trying to show the world that there's more to Medellín, more to Colombia than just drugs and Pablo Escobar. And so sort of making Medellín a character, the energy, the beauty, the love, a character was really important to me too.
I also thought the score was awesome, and it felt like they were friends of his. So how did you find those composers? How did they come to be part of the project?
So I worked with the same composer I've always used, H. Scott Salinas, and then I wanted to have a lot of the sounds of Jose in the score as well. And so he has this sort of wonder kid producer. I think he's like 24 years old, Sky Rompiendo. And so Sky came in for a few days and just sort of gave us a bunch of beats and a bunch of sort of almost like wild tracks that we incorporated in the score. And then he scored a few specific songs, but we ended up using just a lot of sort of, almost just like wild sounds that incorporated into the score to make sure that it wasn't a huge juxtaposition between the energy of Jose's music and the score itself. Although I did want that juxtaposition, cool. But I didn't want it to be like, a huge chasm.
No, it was like this, it was like a rest. It was like restful coming off those songs, but it was like, it felt a one, it felt like a piece. But it's interesting you work with the same composer all the time. That's a very intimate relationship then, like across every film. And that person must be what's his name?
H. Scott Salinas.
Super versatile composer. Do you also use the same other crew members that are the same, or is it pretty much a different team for every film?
I've sort of varied it up a bit over the years, but I like working often with the same people. I think it's
the best.
You have a family and you grow with that family, and but I think each film requires a different set of characters depending on what the subject matter is. So.
But that collaboration must have been really fun to throw one of J Balvin's guys with your composer, and it worked.
Yeah.
That's neat. All right. Another question from the audience? In the back, right there.
For sure. Yeah. I think he was sort of damned if he did and damned if he didn't. Is that the expression? I think for the most part, he was he got a lot of good feedback for what he did. I think he got a lot of hate too. People didn't think he said enough. People didn't think he didn't go as far as they wanted him to. And yeah, some people said he didn't go, they sort of ran the gamut of people who were happy with what he said and people who weren't happy with what he said. And I think the interesting thing is that when, as I'm sure many of you know, is that, Colombia has been undergoing, massive protests again over the past couple of months as the film's been released. And that same sort of trajectory that you see in this 1 week during the film has been rekindled, both on the streets of Medellín, but also within Jose himself. People looking to him to say something, people not happy with him, with what he said, and that same sort of debate. So how much he's grown from that week has been sort of, debated a lot.
Anyone else? Right here. Yeah.
That's a very good question. I can't say I've thought about that. I think, I don't know. I think on one hand, and I'm sure people in the audience might not be happy with this answer, but I empathize with Jose. I feel like I generally try to not make my films political, although they are extremely political. I most of my films are about very topical things, but I keep myself out of them. When I do press, I don't like to bring my own, I have very strong feelings about this world and our government over the past 4 years. But I really, to me, our world is divided enough. And I think that film and documentary film has the ability to bring people together. And that's sort of the small little role that I feel like I play in this world. So while I didn't necessarily totally agree with his stance, I could understand and empathize with his reluctance, I guess, to sort of enter into that debate. Yeah. I don't know if that answered your question. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I had a really talented group of editors from both Colombia and the States. There's 4 of us and then me. And it started out, it's sort of a pandemic story. 85-90% of the film was cut pre-COVID, and then we locked the last 10% sort of as COVID was entering the US and as I was starting this other doc. And so it was a strange thing I'm a very hands-on person, probably to a fault. And so, yeah, it was strange to do so. I generally, when I start out, first of all, when I probably said this on the stage before, but when I was 21 years old, I heard Al Maisel say, if you end up with the story you started with, then you weren't listening along the way. And I think that's good advice for life. And I think that's good advice for filmmaking. It's don't be dogmatic, be open to the story changing. And that's something that I've really held close to my heart, both in my macro decisions in my career and on a sort of frame to frame, minute, second to second while shooting, frame to frame in the edit room way. And generally when I start, I sort of write a treatment, and then like sort of a long outline. And generally by the end of a film, it's treatment number 49. It goes through tons. I'm constantly reevaluating and challenging my own perceptions. And I screen the hell out of my films. I screen it for hundreds of people. I mean, this COVID film that I just made, I probably screened it for 500 people. I love getting feedback. Most editors hate that, but I always love storing whatever information I can in the back of my head just to see what people, because, we're not in just some little castle, twisting our mustaches. Ultimately, we want people to see our films, right? And so I love getting feedback to know what is connecting with people, what's not connecting with people. Is what I'm intending to do emotionally, intellectually, viscerally happening, or is it, or am I just dreaming it's happening? So,
Yeah, even with the scripted film, they say there's the film you write, the film you shoot, and the film you edit, But with docs, it really is like my favorite thing is it breaks down all of our preconceived notions that we didn't even know we had in the first place. And by the end, we're just like, oh, I don't have any judgments, and now I have to make the whole audience feel that way, Do your test screenings, are they homespun? Are they like 20 people and clipboards afterwards? Or is it like 500 people at once? Or like 5 screenings of 100 people? Like, how do you break it down?
I generally go to I have like rounds. I go through like people I trust first. And then I go through other people I trust. And then I go through people I don't know. And
then you have the original people back.
Sometimes I bring people back. And then, I sometimes do like actual focus groups. Not like ones you pay for, but like
but people just
ones.
Do not know you. Right. I love test screenings too. And even just watching a film with people who haven't seen the film, the criticism that comes up in us, you know what I mean? And seeing through their eyes, even if that's not what they're seeing, but just as soon as you're screening it for any kind of audience, it's like a whole, you know what I mean? I always end up like throwing the film up in the air at that point, right after a test screening. It just takes a big turn, usually. Yeah. Those are big moments. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for making this and and coming all the way here and sharing it with us. It's the first time I've seen a film in this theater since they redid it, which I guess was right before COVID. So to see this, I felt like I was at a concert. It was awesome. And it was a great concert. So
thank you for a chat. And thank you all for coming. It meant so much to me. So thank you.
Good job.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. If you'd like to hear more from our documentary series, check out episode 257, featuring director Nanette Burstein discussing her documentary series Hillary with Rebecca Camisa. You can find past episodes of The Director's Cut wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and have a great week. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.